The day my daughter-in-law labeled my freezer, I didn't cry. I didn't argue either. I just stood in my own kitchen, looking at her handwriting on my meals, and suddenly knew, with absolute certainty starting today, nobody controls my life but me. Please don't touch that, Martha. It's already accounted for on Thursday's schedule. My daughter-in-law Vanessa said, slamming my freezer door shut with a sharp, definitive click. I stood there completely stunned, still holding a bag of coffee I'd just bought from Safeway. Vanessa was holding a thick black Sharpie and a roll of masking tape. When I looked into the open freezer chest, I could hardly believe my eyes. Every single one of the meals I had lovingly prepped and frozen, my pot roast, my homemade soups, even my pound cakes had been covered in Vanessa's clunky handwriting. Slapped onto my Tupperware containers were labels like Tuesday soup for grandkids, Friday Martha's leftovers, or Sunday prep family dinner. She had cataloged my entire inventory without saying a single word to me. "I'm just organizing your life so nothing goes to waste," she added, flashing that cold, patronizing smile she always used whenever she treated me like an incapable nursing home resident. My son Brandon stood out in the hallway staring blankly at his phone, completely silent. In that moment, I didn't scream. A deep, icy clarity washed over me instead. I looked at Vanessa, then at the taped-up containers, and finally at my mute son. Ever since my husband passed away, I had slowly let myself be pushed into the role of the quiet, built-in helper. I cooked for them, ran their errands, and was constantly bailed them out. But this was my house, my kitchen. Vanessa had used the emergency spare key to simply march in while I was out grabbing groceries. "Well, that's certainly organized," I said quietly. I grabbed my coffee and walked upstairs. Vanessa smiled triumphantly, assuming she'd won yet another round. Brandon called out a quick, "Bye, Mom, see you tomorrow for childcare," before the front door clicked shut. They thought I would just roll over, but looking down the hallway, I knew that masking tape was the final boundary she would ever cross. Starting tomorrow, things in this house were going to run by my rules. I swore it to myself. The second they left, I went straight to the desk in my living room. I pulled out my bank statements from the credit union covering the last 6 months and laid out a yellow notepad. It was time for cold, hard numbers, not sentimental family guilt. Line by line, I meticulously tallied up how much I had been spending on weekly groceries at Kroger just to feed my son's family. Vanessa dropped the kids off at my place 3 times a week right after preschool. "You're home all day anyway," she had casually tossed out at the front door just last week. The fact that I was spending hundreds of dollars every single month out of my modest retirement check on meat, fresh produce, and juice for them was treated as a given. A closer look at the statements revealed the bitter truth. Brandon hadn't transferred a single dime of the agreed-upon grocery money since April. Instead, I found receipts for movie tickets and zoo passes that I had covered in cash for them, which were never reimbursed. They weren't just treating me like a free chef and nanny. They were letting me bankroll their lifestyle. As I added up the numbers, my gaze drifted to the spare key ring sitting on the entryway console. Vanessa had used her emergency key without asking, sneaking down into my basement to raid my freezer and dictate how I used my own food. This wasn't a family helping each other out. It was a hostile takeover of my daily life. I didn't feel sad anymore, just a deep, unshakable determination. They saw me as a piece of property they could schedule at their convenience. I snapped the binder shut, slipped my debit card into my purse, and called a local locksmith. It was time for the first unannounced move that would throw their comfortable little system completely off balance. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, the locksmith's van pulled up to my driveway. It took less than 15 minutes for him to swap out the deadbolt on my front door. I held 3 shiny, brand new keys in my hand. Not a single one of them was meant for Vanessa or Brandon. Right after he left, I marched down to the basement. I pulled every single container out of the freezer, ripped Vanessa's masking tape labels off one by one, and tossed the shredded pieces right into the trash bin out back. Instead of the soup Vanessa's master plan had slated for Tuesday, I made myself a single fresh portion of grilled asparagus and salmon. As the clock ticked closer to preschool pickup time, I settled into my armchair with a good book and a fresh cup of coffee. At 4:15, I heard the familiar jingle of keys on the porch. A key slid into the lock, followed by a metallic grinding sound and the impatient, aggressive rattling of the doorknob. The old key didn't fit anymore. A moment later, the doorbell rang, frantically followed by Brandon's annoyed voice, muffled through the heavy wood. "Mom, you in there? Our key is jamming for some reason." I walked calmly to the door, opened it just a crack, and looked coolly at my daughter-in-law, who was holding the grandkids by their hands. Vanessa stared at me, utterly dumbfounded. "What on earth is going on and we can't get in?" She snapped, visibly irritated. I stayed completely relaxed in the doorframe. "I had the locks changed this morning, strictly for security purposes." I said, my voice low but firm. Vanessa let out an incredulous scoff. "And why weren't we told? Where's our new key? We need to get the kids inside. I have a massive conference call in 10 minutes. I looked her dead in the eye. "There is no new key for you. This is my home. Moving forward, you'll need to call ahead and make sure I'm available before you drop by." Brandon just stared at me with his mouth open, completely speechless. If quiet revenge has ever brought you comfort, hope, or a reminder that kindness and quiet strength still matter, thank you for being here. Like many creators today, we use AI tools to assist with parts of our production process. But every story is carefully selected, researched, edited, fact-checked, and produced by our team with great care and respect for the people behind these experiences. Because our channel's monetization is currently unavailable, your support helps us continue creating thoughtful stories for this community. If you'd like to help, please consider supporting Quiet Revenge with the price of a small cup of coffee through Patreon, Ko-fi, or PayPal. Patreon https://www.patreon.com/quietrevenge family. Ko-fi https://ko-fi.com/the story family. PayPal https://www.paypal.com/paypalme/kanhuangmin. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your kindness means more than you know. "Mom, why do you have to make everything so complicated?" Brandon said late that evening over the phone. His voice sounded drained, carrying that signature heavy sigh he always used when he wanted me to feel guilty. "Vanessa is totally drowning at work, and you just lock us out. You know how stressful things are for us right now. Can't you just react like a normal person for once?" I sat in my chair, calmly continuing my knitting. "I didn't lock anyone out, Brandon. I secured my own home. If you want to bring the kids over, you need to stick to our agreements, and that includes the finances." A heavy, suffocating silence stretched over the line. "What finances?" he finally asked, his tone suddenly guarded. "The grocery money you owe me since April, the money for the kids' weekend trips." I sat down and calculated everything. "You owe me just under $1,000. Brandon let out a nervous, defensive cough. Mom, we're family. You don't nickel and dime family over minor things. We honestly thought you loved feeling useful. It's not like you have a busy schedule anyway. Those words stung, but they only steeled my resolve. I am not your unpaid servant, Brandon, and my money doesn't grow on trees. Until that $1,000 is back in my account, afternoon childcare is officially suspended. The entire next day, my phone was completely dead. They were trying the silent treatment, assuming I'd sit lonely in my empty house, cry and beg them to let me see the grandkids. They completely miscalculated. Instead, I grabbed my handbag and walked out to the bus stop. I hadn't seen my neighbor Mrs. Gable for coffee in months because I was always on standby for them. We had a wonderful afternoon catching up. But when I got home, a thick manila envelope was waiting in my mailbox. It wasn't an apology. It was a formal, typed-up demand for property maintenance fees. They were striking back. The document they sent was an absolute joke. Vanessa had drafted a demand for $2,500, claiming it was my share for upcoming utility assessments and roof repairs on the house. They lived rent-free in the spacious upper unit of the duplex, while the ground floor belonged entirely to me. It was a transparent, petty attempt to squeeze me and force me to drop the $1,000 grocery debt. On Thursday, Vanessa showed up on my porch, completely unannounced. She waited until another neighbor left the driveway, then slipped inside the front door the second I unlocked it, shoving past me straight into the kitchen. "We need to talk, Martha," she said, her voice dripping with authority. "This stubborn attitude of yours is hurting the entire family. The kids miss their grandmother, but we simply cannot afford this financial drama right now. You're going to sign this maintenance cost agreement and drop these ridiculous grocery charges, or we are going to seriously restrict your access to the kids. Brandon is miserable because of how you're acting." She slammed the paper onto the kitchen table and slid a pen toward me. I looked down at the document, then up at her cold, calculating face. She truly believed she could use my grandchildren as bargaining chips to extort my hard-earned savings. The old version of me would have signed it just to keep the peace. But the freezer incident had permanently cured me of that weakness. "I won't be signing a single thing, Vanessa," I said, evenly, sliding the pen right back to her. "The roof was completely replaced 2 years ago, and I pay my exact share of utilities according to the property deed. This is a pathetic attempt at a shakeup." Vanessa's face turned a furious shade of red. "If you're going to be this selfish, don't be surprised when you find yourself completely alone in this world," she hissed, spinning on her heel and storming out. I took a deep breath. It was time for my counter-strategy. First thing Friday morning, I took a trip down to the credit union. I sat across from the branch manager, a very professional man who had handled my late husband's accounts for decades. Without a shred of hesitation, I revoked the broad power of attorney I had foolishly granted Brandon years ago for emergencies. Next, I closed out the joint savings account where I had been depositing money every month for the grandkids' future college funds. That money was moved entirely into a private high-yield account under my name alone. After that, I went to the transit station and bought a senior regional rail pass. I wanted to travel again, to take day trips to Boston, to see old friends, and to actually live my own life. When I got back home, I sat down and drafted a very formal, legally binding letter to Brandon. I reminded him in writing that the original lease agreement for the upper unit, which he had signed with his father, contained a crystal-clear clause they were responsible for their portion of property taxes and insurance paid in advance every year, which they hadn't done in nearly 12 months. I sent the letter via certified mail so there would be an undeniable paper trail. Dropping that envelope into the blue USPS mailbox on the corner felt like a massive weight lifting off my shoulders. The old Martha, the one who took hits just to avoid a fight, was officially gone. Vanessa thought she could run my life by putting labels on my food and organizing my calendar. She had completely forgotten that legally, this entire property belonged to me. Over dinner, I poured myself a nice glass of wine and waited for the fallout. Their weekend upstairs was about to get incredibly uncomfortable, but it was no longer my problem. The dam broke on Saturday afternoon. I was outside on the porch, sweeping up the steps, when Brandon came tearing down the stairs from the upper unit. He was clutching my certified letter in his hand, his eyes wide with sheer panic. "Mom, what the hell is this?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "A certified letter from my own mother, and why can't I access your account? I tried to pay for gas online 20 minutes ago and the card was declined." "What are you doing to us?" I set the broom down and looked at him calmly. "I'm managing my own finances now, Brandon, and that letter is simply a reminder of your legal obligations as a tenant." Right on cue, Vanessa rushed down the stairs to join him. She crossed her arms, glaring at me with pure disdain. "This is pathetic, Martha. You're his mother. You can't do this to us. We were planning on using that savings account money for our summer vacation next month. You have plenty of retirement income. You don't even need it. You are intentionally ruining our family trip." And there it was. The ugly, unvarnished truth. They had earmarked my savings for their luxury vacation while I was clipping coupons at the grocery store. That savings account was meant for your children's education, not a beach vacation, I said, my voice cutting through the air like ice. "And since you haven't paid a dime for groceries or your share of property costs, I am officially done funding your lifestyle." Vanessa let out a bitter, ugly laugh. "Fine. If that's how it's going to be, you can forget about seeing the kids. We'll hire a private babysitter and you can see exactly where your greed gets you." I just gave her a slight smile. They still thought the kids were a weapon they could use against me. They had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead. Monday morning brought a harsh dose of reality for the couple upstairs. At 7 o'clock, I could hear Vanessa frantically running around the apartment directly above my head. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Brandon. "Mom, look please. Vanessa has a massive corporate meeting this morning and our sitter just canceled on us. Can you please just cover today? We are completely stuck here." I kept my answer incredibly brief. "No, Brandon. I have plans today. I'm taking the train into Boston." Before he could even utter a response, I hung up. I put on my best wool coat, grabbed my bag, and walked out to the station. It turned out to be a gorgeous day. I met up with my dear friend Clara. We had a fantastic lunch at a nice bistro, and we spent hours talking about old times. Not once did I think about crying kids or Vanessa's controlling little sticky notes. When I returned late that afternoon, I ran into Mr. Henderson in the driveway. He ran a small local auto repair shop down the street and was currently backing his truck up. "Hey there, Martha," he called out warmly. "I just dropped the signed lease for the garage in your box and wired the first month's rent. Thanks again for the opportunity." Brandon, who had just pulled up from work looking completely exhausted, caught the entire exchange. He marched over to us, his face dark. "What lease?" "That's our garage, Mom." "Where am I supposed to park my car?" I looked at him calmly. "The garage is deeded to the ground floor unit, which means it's mine. Since you aren't paying your property fees, I needed to find another source of income. Mr. Henderson pays on time." Brandon stood there completely paralyzed. Vanessa's little childcare threat had cost them hundreds of dollars for an emergency nanny on day 1, while I was pulling in extra rental income. The tables had turned, and it was hitting them right in the wallet. By Tuesday evening, they couldn't take the pressure anymore. There was a knock at my door, not a furious pounding this time, but a timid, hesitant tap. I opened it to find Brandon and Vanessa standing in the hallway. Vanessa looked exhausted, her arrogant expression completely wiped clean. Brandon was holding a plain white envelope. "Can we please come in for a minute, Mom?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside and escorted them into the kitchen. They sat down at the exact same table where just days before, Vanessa had threatened to cut me off from my grandchildren. "Here is the $1,000 for the groceries," Brandon said, sliding the envelope across the table. "And we set up an automatic monthly transfer for the property fees. Please, Martha. Logistically and financially, we are drowning without you. The preschool is closed all next week for staff development, and neither of us can take any more time off work. We're not trying to beg, but we really need you to be their grandma." Vanessa remained completely silent, staring intently at her fingernails. It clearly took every ounce of pride she possessed just to sit in my kitchen. I looked at the money, then at the two of them. "I appreciate you finally paying what you owe," I said calmly. "But that doesn't change the new arrangement. I am no longer your on-call unpaid labor. I will watch the kids exactly 2 days next week, Tuesday and Thursday, from 9 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. Not a minute earlier, not a minute later. The other days are entirely up to you. You are adults. Figure it out like adults." Vanessa looked up sharply, but she didn't dare argue. She just gave a stiff, silent nod. "And one last thing," I added, pointing a finger toward the basement door. "If I ever catch anyone sneaking into my space or touching my things again, childcare is permanently canceled. Am I making myself clear?" Brandon nodded quickly. "Yes, Mom. Thank you." 6 months have flown by since that Tuesday evening. The freezer chest is still hums away in my basement, but today there isn't a single piece of masking tape or a drop of Vanessa's handwriting anywhere near it. Whenever I cook now, it's because I genuinely want to, not because I'm expected to feed an entire extra household. I actually used that $1,000 of back pay to treat myself to a beautiful weekend getaway in Savannah. Brandon and Vanessa have stuck to the rules perfectly ever since. They call ahead to ask permission before they come down, and the utility and property transfers land in my account on the exact first of every single month. Our relationship isn't incredibly warm or overly affectionate, but frankly, it doesn't need to be. It is built on a foundation of mutual respect and crystal clear boundaries. Vanessa learned the hard way that you cannot catalog, schedule, and control the life of an independent woman. Whenever she drops the kids off now, she says a polite goodbye at the front door. She knows exactly how fast that door will close if she steps out of line. Most afternoons, you can find me sitting on the porch bench with Mrs. Gable, sipping iced coffee, and soaking in the absolute peace and quiet of my property. My keys stay securely inside my purse, and absolutely nobody has access to my sanctuary without my explicit permission. I didn't let my daughter-in-law organize my life. I took it back and organized it myself. And after all those years of sacrificing my own happiness for everyone else, I can honestly say it's the best feeling in the world. I am finally the queen of my own castle, and I dictate exactly how my story goes. If quiet revenge has ever brought you comfort, hope, or a reminder that kindness and quiet strength still matter, thank you for being here. Like many creators today, we use AI tools to assist with parts of our production process. But every story is carefully selected, researched, edited, fact-checked, and produced by our team with great care and respect for the people behind these experiences. Because our channel's monetization is currently unavailable, your support helps us continue creating thoughtful stories for this community. If you'd like to help, please consider supporting Quiet Revenge with the price of a small cup of coffee through Patreon, Ko-fi, or PayPal. Patreon. https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family. Ko-fi. https://ko-fi.com/The Story Family. PayPal. https://www.paypal.com/PayPal.me/Kan Huang Min. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your kindness means more than you know.